Hello again everybody and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John and a serious topic today, so let's get right to it. People who felt fine 1 minute and next woke up in a hospital. What happened? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I was walking to a birthday party. Next thing I knew, I woke up in an ambulance. I had been struck over the head and was knocked unconscious. I never found out who it was or what they wanted. They didn't take anything from me. On a business trip in Texas, me and two co-workers were driving to work. I was in the back passenger seat, woke up in an ambulance, got hit by a Sprinter van at 50 miles per hour and slammed into a guardrail according to the police report. I don't remember any of it. Broke 7 ribs, collarbone, concussion, and fractured 2 bones in my neck. Took like 7 months to recover, but my neck and shoulder still bother me daily. When I was around 8 or 9, my parents went to have dinner at a fancy restaurant. My younger brother was at a friend's house and I had a babysitter. When I finally fell asleep, I woke up in an ambulance. Turns out my babysitter overdosed me with pills so I wouldn't wake up whilst she threw a party at my house. She gave me so many I passed out and had a reaction. My dad was driving me to school and suddenly I was in my bed. I get up, open my door, and ask my family what just happened. They all simultaneously screamed for me to go back to bed. Apparently, I had already asked them what happened 6 separate times. I had a series of grand mal seizures during the car ride. Went from chatty to seizing all of a sudden. My dad called our pediatrician, and I was eventually diagnosed with a form of epilepsy. My dad was told to take me home and put me to bed. It was the most disorienting thing I've ever experienced. It took 6 months to feel normal again. I had a constant sense of newness with familiar things that were very weird. I had a severe asthma attack to the point my entire throat closed up. I turned blue and was lying on the kitchen floor. Woke up in my granddad's car with a straw in my throat and him banging on my back. Woke up again in the hospital. I was about 7. I was watching Pocahontas in a blanket fort with my stuffed animals home from preschool because I had pink eye. The next thing I knew, over a week had passed. I was surrounded by doctors who were begging me to open up my mouth. My jaw was locked shut, and I had bacterial meningitis. My parents were there weeping, and my dad told me if I opened my mouth for the doctors, he would buy me a Barbie Jeep. I tried. It was impossible. Days later, I tried again, and part of my tongue fell out. I had bit it off during a seizure. Everyone was yelling, and I looked at my dad and said, "Where's my Barbie Jeep?" I have almost no memories from that time of my life, but the promise my dad made me was on my mind in every memory I have. My parents were told I would never be 100% again, and I would likely have severe brain damage permanently. It was excruciatingly painful to move and do things for a while, but my dad kept reminding me that I could drive my Jeep if I kept at it. I remember watching him put it together, but I wasn't strong enough to drive it. My personality was gone, but I just didn't care. I barely spoke for months and had to learn how to read, write, and draw again. Fast forward, I finished high school early, and I have 0 health issues now. I genuinely believe my parents are to thank. The brain can heal really well, but they found a way to motivate me to keep healing constantly. This was an incredibly sweet story, and I loved it, so thanks for sharing. Parents and the brain can do amazing things with small goals. My girlfriend had a thyroid-related heart attack, where she was revived and put into a medically induced coma for like 2 weeks, and took her another 2 weeks to come out of it. Then she had to go to inpatient physical therapy for a bit. Talking to her after she woke up, I couldn't help but be astounded how much it effed with her memory. It was like she remembered events, peoples, things, and places, but any concept of time went out the window. For example, she thought she was living at her ex-husband's mom's house, driving a car she had before we met, working at her current job, and knew we were dating. And of course, as those were all simultaneously impossible, she was having a lot of trouble figuring out what was right and what wasn't. I was in elementary school. I stayed home because I had a light fever one day. I took a nap and woke up 3 days later in the hospital with no feeling in my legs. I had contracted viral meningitis, which had cut off the nerves to my lower body. I was bedridden for 3 weeks and spent several more weeks in physical therapy relearning how to walk. The horrors I endured during my stay were traumatic enough, but I still feel lucky. In high school, a fellow classmate had contracted bacterial meningitis. He died 2 days later. I don't know if absolutely plastered counts as being fine 1 minute, but yeah. I remember being shit-faced, sitting on a jungle gym in a park, and then waking up the next morning in a hospital with an IV and catheter. Apparently I was found in a coma and had multiple organs shutting down. If I hadn't received medical help, I would have died. I'm now 3 years sober. I was at work having a normal day. I went to the toilet and could not get off the floor because I was doubled over in pain. I somehow managed to stagger out to where my colleagues were, and they called me an ambulance. Got to hospital and had all my clothes and belongings shoved in a bag and was rushed into emergency surgery for a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. Ironically similar to another comment, I was also riding my bicycle to work when I got hit by a drunk driver going 45 miles per hour head on. I would have been going about 20 miles per hour myself. I have no memory of being hit. I had a lot of injuries, being such a traumatic impact. Avulsion fracture to tibia, bruised lung, moderate brain injury grade 4 or 5, lacerated spleen, almost fatal, broken left femur, 2 vertebrae with compression fractures, broken left scapula, broken left clavicle, broken left second rib, and various scrapes, the worst being 6 by 1.5 and 1 inches. I've mostly recovered, but my left leg can't be walked on really. My left arm will never be what it was. The worst scrape was on top of the shoulder, so that muscle is just gone. She was drunk, speeding, and on the wrong side of the road. She tried changing and claiming my lights were off, but they were still on at the scene. I don't know how I managed to survive. It was a collision of a total of 65 miles per hour. I wasn't even supposed to work that day either. Now, the pain, my heavens does that hurt. The first vivid memory I have was when they set my femur into place, out in traction, without any kind of pain meds. I'd lost so much blood, I couldn't handle any painkillers at all. After that, once adrenaline wore off, the pain was excruciating. It felt like I was breaking a new bone with every breath with all the injuries I had. The pharmacy had some issue, and I only got an opioid twice in line 4 or 5 hours. They only worked for like 20 to 30 minutes. Never really complained about it, no point, it is what it is. The driver complained about more the first 10 minutes than I have in 10 months, cussing and screaming at me while I was lying there, dying. I had a friend over for a puppy play date, and I remember looking at the clock and thinking I needed to pack for a road trip because we were going to visit my fiance's family. The next second I was being told to hold very still, and I was having some sort of scan done. The nurse was amazing because she managed to keep me calm the whole time. We were at a stoplight and rear-ended by a distracted driver. I completely lost 14 hours. I cannot remember them at all, just a complete black hole. The worst memory loss is that I have very foggy memories from about 2 months before the accident. It feels like you're trying to remember a dream, like you know something happened, but have no concrete memories. This time period includes my fiance proposing to me, and I hate so much that I cannot remember it. Finally, the entire school year before that, I'm a teacher, seems like a really long time. Like if I try really hard, I can have concrete memories, but it is like trying to remember a birthday party from 20 years ago. Everything before that is still fine and present. That was 4 years ago, and I still struggle with my memory. Watching the dashcam footage is surreal, because I know that it's me, and I was awake and talking, but no matter how hard I try, I cannot remember it. Please, please, please do not text and drive. It is not worth the risk. The young man that hit us made a simple decision that completely changed my life, and I will probably struggle for the rest of my life because he was looking at his phone. Edit. To add some humorous details, I was having Groundhog Day every minute or so, and I would generally ask the same questions in the same order. Obviously, I would ask what happened, then how did I get here? My fiance and the nurses would make up new answers every time. Apparently, the one that got the biggest reaction is that I got there by a rocket ship. Small bowel obstruction. My neighbor saved me. I went to bed perfectly fine. Then apparently I was puking blood, and we had massive gaps under our front doors. Like you could stick your hands under it, and they were all studio apartments. My neighbor walked by my unit walking into hers and saw she heard me gurgling, and she was pounding on the door and I wasn't responding. She kicked it in, brought me to the hospital, downtown 2 blocks away, and I woke up 2 weeks later. Nothing obvious caused it, and I lost 110 pounds in 2 weeks. This happened 4 years ago. I've gained about 50 pounds back, But today I'm healthy and no longer wake up in fear. It is extremely overwhelming to go to bed, ready to wake up for class the next day, and instead wake up 2 weeks later, having lost over half of your body weight. I think it's fair to say it's a little traumatizing to wake up in an ICU. My mom, my brother, and I were in the family room chatting. I was maybe 8 at the time, my brother 13. My mom asked if we'd like some of the Danish chocolate the exchange student we hosted for a few weeks gave us as a parting gift. Excited, I raced to the kitchen to beat my brother there. I tripped over a stool someone left out, let's be honest, probably me. I fell over it and hit my head on the edge of the kitchen counter. From there I blacked out. Now this wasn't my first head injury, and certainly not my last, so I bravely recall waking up at the ER at the hospital. I remember my body feeling extremely heavy and my head pounding like nothing ever before or since. Apparently I scrambled my memories up even more than one of my first head injuries. 14 stitches to sew me back up, and one sort of boring summer inside with the TV. Never did get that chocolate. I would love to know how many of us also have sprinted as a young kid into a room and smashed into the corner of a bar or a countertop or something. I get a little scar right here from that when I was 5 on Christmas Eve. It's a rite of passage. 1 month short of my 14th birthday, I was riding my bicycle home from school. One second I was at the top of a steep hill and on the wrong side of the road. The next second I was standing in the middle of the street. I reasoned I must have fallen off of my bike. It was lying nearby, so I picked it up and tried to get back on. For some reason the pedals wouldn't move. At this time, a bunch of people had come up to me and they were all freaking out. I was confused at first as to why I was surrounded by hysterical adults until I happened to look down. That was when I finally noticed all the blood pouring out of my face. So I let them guide me off the street while an ambulance was called for me. I spent the ambulance ride asking if I was going to get a shot. The EMTs kept giving me evasive answers, so I kept asking. I still don't remember what happened, but here's what I've pieced together over the years. While riding on the wrong side of the road, I passed in front of a stopped car. The driver wanted to turn right, so she was looking to her left to spot a gap in traffic. When she saw one, she pulled out, not realizing I was approaching from her right. She barely knocked me off my bicycle, but I was going over 20 miles per hour because of the hill I just went down. I hit the asphalt face first with no helmet. The skin on the left side of my forehead was completely torn off and had to be regrown. I was maybe 16. I had asked my mom if we could go look at puppies at a pet store, cause man, do I love dogs. There were a lot of really cute dogs, but after being inside for a minute I felt off. Not like something is extremely wrong, just sort of off. At this point I figured I was having an asthma attack, and since my rescue inhaler was in the car, went to go sit down and use it. My mom came out a minute later and started driving me to the hospital because my breathing wasn't getting better. Woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed with my mom and dad sobbing next to me. Apparently, I had a severe allergic reaction. My throat had closed almost completely. The doctor that appeared soon after me waking said that I was extremely lucky and gave me an EpiPen. Still don't know what I was allergic to, because even with insurance, getting allergy tested was way too expensive. Still is kinda too expensive. Still crawling out of medical debt now. Oh, I finally have one of these that I can answer. I've been a regular runner for 20 plus years. About 7 years ago, I was doing a half marathon. I live in Florida and have my entire life, so I'm used to the heat and the humidity here and have always been an active outdoor person. You can probably guess where this is going. For this half marathon, the last mile goes along the park where the race finished. The last thing I remember is seeing the 12-mile sign. Half is 13.1 for those who don't know. The next thing I remember, I was in the ICU. I'd gotten heat stroke with a body temperature around 106 or so. Luckily, they got me to a hospital where they gave me ice baths and tons of fluids. I had to stay several days while my organ function returned to normal, but have no lasting effects. P.S. I do have a photo of myself crossing the finish line, despite not remembering anything past mile 12. I think heat exhaustion and heat stroke are two of the most underrated, dangerous things that we can do to our bodies, so I'm glad it turned out okay. I have an acquaintance who it didn't end up so well for him. Was on the way to work on my bike. Last thing I remember is turning out of the driveway. Woke up 5 days later in a neurotrauma unit with 11 broken ribs, a shattered clavicle, a punctured lung, 8 stitches on my foot, 6 behind my ear, and permanent nerve damage. I have no recollection to this day of what happened. From the evidence, I'm pretty sure I was run over. There was also blood on my helmet visor from the wound behind the ear. I've had some parts filled in for me. The first hospital they took me to couldn't give me strong painkillers and risked putting me under because they didn't know what damage my skull had taken. CT scans were required. Took 4 hours for me to get to the hospital with a CT machine, 4 hours with a punctured lung. There's no video of the incident. It happened conveniently in an unsurveilled spot between 2 video cameras. Bystanders were of no help, at least my brother and dad didn't collect any information from them, and they started to share with me. I suspected for some time that my then girlfriend, with whom I'd recently broken up with, had tried to have me taken out. While I was under, she turned up at the hospital and convinced my family that I'd tried to kill myself in a bike accident while wearing a helmet in 6 p.m. rush hour traffic, half a mile from my apartment, where my dad was sitting on the 10th floor. My brother and my dad believed her. They still think I remember exactly what happened, but won't tell them because I'm embarrassed to admit I was suicidal. The real irony? I never had suicidal thoughts until after I recovered and realized my own family chooses to believe an outsider over me. They still do. This is what betrayal is. Took years to move past those thoughts.